In this video, I'm going to tell you how I put a bunch of plants in my classroom, and I'm going to show you how to do the same thing. G'day everyone, my name is Scott, and when I'm not making videos on YouTube about avocados and other plant things, I am a primary school teacher. I've been working as a teacher for the last 7 years in Melbourne, Australia, and I keep a bunch of plants in my classroom. There are a number of reasons why I do this, but I'm going to show you how I do this. And if you're not a teacher but you're still interested, this video is relevant if you want to keep plants in your workplace. If there's a space that you work in, like an office, or even if you're just thinking about getting your plants started at home and you want to keep it fairly low key, this is a video that's going to tell you how to do that. So it's only been the last kind of 2 years that I've really started having a lot more plants in my classroom. I think having plants in an environment is really important. It's not just my opinion. There is lots of research going into what plants do to people in an environment. I'm going to come straight out and say I'm not putting the plants in there to clean the air. I have an air purifier that does that way more effectively, and the amount of plants that I would need to actually have, a difference with the air quality would be phenomenal, and most of it's in the soil anyway. So it's nothing to do with that, but studies have shown that houseplants in an environment can reduce stress. And this is physiologically measurable. Participants of these studies, when put in an indoor environment with plants, show reduced levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, compared to indoor environments that don't have any plants. Different studies have shown that it increases student happiness, increases student focus, and those are some things that I want to have in my classroom. I also like it, and that is actually important. So as teachers, we're spending a lot of time in our classroom, and I think that it's really important that we enjoy the space, partly for, our own mental health and well-being and enjoying being in the space, but also to show that we care about the space and to create an environment that is welcoming and conducive to all the wonderful things that we're trying to do. There are links in the description to articles about plants in the classroom if you'd like to do some more reading about that. But to summarize, plants in the classroom are a good thing. So let me talk about how this started. So I have only been doing this for the last few years. In other times, I was in classrooms that were much more of a shared space, that I didn't have quite as much say over what went in it, which is okay. But I wanted to start the 2024 school year with a lot of plants ready to go. So I started preparing in 2023. About halfway through the year, I started taking a bunch of cuttings from my plants at home. If you haven't noticed, I quite like plants. I've got lots of plants at home. So I just started taking propagations. After they had grown some roots, I potted them all up, and I ended up with quite a few plants in plastic nursery pots. Now, I had spent very little money at that point. The plants are essentially free because I already owned the mother plants and I just took propagations. The soil, my soil mix is really, really cheap, and the plastic nursery pots are also really cheap. So I was doing well financially, but I did want to buy a few things. So I've gone and purchased a bunch of these rattan or seagrass cachepos, so decorative pots that I can put these in. These are not just baskets, like they've got a plastic liner on the inside. Super important because I don't want to be dealing with mold, and if the seagrass gets wet for an extended period of time, it's just gonna go moldy, which we absolutely don't need. So the plastic liner, this is standard cachepo stuff. I'm going to be, just placing the plants in there, and just look at how much nicer that looks already. So I did spend about 100 Australian dollars on about 15 cachepos to start with. Some of them were brand new, some of them I op-shopped. So there was a bit of startup cost for me there, but since then I've actually added more cachepos to the classroom. I bought 10 over the summer that someone was getting rid of on Facebook Marketplace for really, really cheap, so I snatched them up. So if you know what you're looking for, you can be a bit opportunistic and browse Facebook Marketplace every so often, search for cachepos, see if anyone's just trying to offload some, because you can do things for cheap. So with my homegrown plants, with the cash pose, it was just a matter of adding them to the classroom for the start of the school year. And that's pretty well the setup. There were also another couple of bits and pieces that I wanted to make sure this was successful. I needed some tools. So I have a watering can. I didn't want to get a super cheap looking one, but this one from IKEA was like $15. I also wanted a spray bottle for moss pole purposes, not for misting plants or anything like that. The spray bottle also has the added benefit of that it makes cleaning off the whiteboard a bit easier. I have a moisture meter because I actually have students helping me maintain these plants, and it's helpful for them to have a tool which will prevent overwatering. I keep all those things in a crate in the classroom. I also have another few bits and pieces like fertilizer that I keep in my locked office because they need to be used from time to time, but I don't need to keep them in the classroom where students could potentially access them. So setting up is the hardest part of this. So making sure that I've got plants, making sure I've got cash pose, the tools to make it all happen. After that is sustaining it. And if you do this well, it works really well for you. The way you do this is going to depend on the age of the students that you're working with. I teach senior primary, so I generally tend towards year 5 and year 6. So they're generally able to take on a bit of responsibility. And it's important to give students responsibility because it teaches them responsibility. And so as a part of my jobs roster in the classroom, I have plant monitors where every 2 weeks, when students get new jobs, I'll get some new plant monitors and they will be in charge of looking after the plants. I have a few moss poles in the classroom, so that means watering the moss poles daily, and it means once or twice a week going around with the moisture meters and checking to see if anything needs watering. Now, I don't mind taking care of the plants, and if I didn't have the students do it, I would just do it. But it's good to be able to foster that responsibility and also increase student ownership of the space because it's their space as well. I also made sure that once or twice a year I am fertilizing the plants. I don't get students to do that, I do that myself. Like it's good to do at the end of a term and it helps them to just, keep going. Then summer comes. Now, summer is something that we absolutely need to consider. Now, I live in Melbourne, Australia. In Australia, we get about 6 weeks off for the summer, and it's hot. It's summer. I could not leave my plants in my classroom for 6 weeks without water. They would die. My classroom, just the way it's situated, gets really hot as well. If I don't have the air conditioning on, it gets real hot. There's a lot of glass. The insulation's not fantastic, so it warms up quickly. Plants can tolerate heat, but if they're dry, they can no longer tolerate it. So I was not going to be coming in weekly during the summer to water the plants, so the plants had to come home with me. At this stage, when I've got 20 plants in the classroom and they're all starting to get larger, at some point I'm going to run into some problems, so I might not be able to keep adding plants to the classroom, but at the moment we're making it work. My balcony got really full over the summer because of all the classroom plants. But taking them home does give the opportunity to do the bigger maintenance stuff like repotting or propagating or any of those kinds of things, so I did that over the summer as well. And then before the following school year started, I added them all back into the classroom. So took them to work, added them in, rearranged them as I needed to, and we were set for another school year. So that's pretty well how I deal with plants in my classroom. So I like to have plenty of them, and I really like the kind of environment that it helps me to create. I want to create a relaxed, welcoming, warm, friendly environment in my classroom where students can focus, that can, help them to be happier and less stressed. But I do have 4 tips that I'd like to share with you if you're going to do something like this in your classroom or in your workplace or in your home. The first is pick plants that are easy. As teachers, we have got so much on our plates. The checklists of work that needs to be done never ends. Like there's always more to do. It's continuous, it keeps getting added on. We want to keep it really stress-free for ourselves. So picking plants that are really hardy is going to be really important. Now you might find certain plants easier than others, and that's totally up to you. But for me, I really enjoyed having a bunch of Monstera in the classroom and a bunch of Philodendron heartleaf varieties, also some pothos, so like devil's ivy, those kind of things. Really hardy, really easy to take care of. There are of course a few avocados in along the way, but I'm pretty comfortable keeping those. But it is fun to be able to watch them grow from seed with your students. Procedural writing, how to grow an avocado tree, there it is, So pick easy plants that are not going to cause you any stress, that are going to be easy, that are going to be able to cop a little bit of neglect if that happens, because that's going to lead to you not getting stressed out. Second thing, don't spend much money. I've spoken about how I spent a bit of money initially on Cashpose. Now I spent that partly knowing that I was going to be making a video about it, so I spend money on things that I make videos for, but if I were doing this without making a video, I would have been making sure that I'm really leaning into the second hand. There's no budgets for this kind of thing. Like, all of the plant stuff that I've bought have come out of my own pocket. There is a conversation to be had about, tax deductions, and if you buy things new, you can probably do that. Getting things secondhand is harder to do that. So these are things to consider. So don't spend much money on this. Third tip is to get students involved in caring for them. It's great to help foster responsibility and ownership of the space. It's their space as well for the time that they're in it. So it's great to get them involved in caring for them. I find that the plants become more than decoration and something to observe more closely, because you see it grow, you see it living, and for a student, that's a cool thing. For a teacher, it's also a cool thing. I like it. And the fourth thing is to accept that damage may happen. So sometimes accidents happen. So I've had some leaves that have been stood on, for example, when they were too close to the floor. Lots of people enter a classroom. I have had cleaners accidentally knock over pots. It happens. So just be, aware that damage will happen at some point, and this is why we're not spending a lot of money and why we're not getting plants that are too hard to care for, because things will go wrong occasionally. Keeping plants in the classroom, I think, is really lovely, and it's not that hard to do once you have the right procedures in place with your students or with yourself to make sure that it is sustained throughout the year and you've got a bit of intention with the setup. So I hope that you've been able to take something out of this video about keeping plants in the classroom or the office or your home to have some success with that and create some really lovely environments. I'd like to say a huge thank you now to my Patreons. Thank you so much to my Patreon members. The names are on the screen now for supporting this channel. If you'd like to become a Patreon member, please check out my Patreon. You will get a monthly Patreon exclusive Scott Grows a Kiwi Vine video, and you'll also get a chance to be the sponsor of the week for the year-long time lapse that I am taking at the moment and publishing in short form content in various places. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you have enjoyed it and you found it really useful. If you want to see more of my stuff, please consider subscribing to Scott Grows an Avocado Tree. I'm also on Instagram at Scott Grows an Avocado Tree. Most of the time, I talk more explicitly about avocados and exclusively about avocados, but this was kind of an important thing for me to talk about, and it's related, so I wanted to make a video about it. If you're a teacher and you're interested in other things that I have made, I have got a YouTube channel that I just put countdown timers on that are paired with a time lapse. I use this in my classroom all the time for all kinds of things. I really like using countdown timers because it gives a sense of time for how long students have to transition or to do a piece of work. So to pair that with another visual like a time lapse, like a sun setting or a candle burning or ice melting, I found it really helpful because it gives multiple senses of how much time you have. So that's time elapse. There's a link in the description below. I also have just a place where I put any videos that I make that I use in my classroom that you can also use. Mr. H's learning resources, also down there as well. That's not too far away from getting monetized, so if you could go and check that one out, I'd really appreciate that. Thanks once again for watching. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Scott grows an avocado tree. Scott grows an avocado tree. Scott grows an avocado tree. Scott grows an avocado tree.